Okay, so when you 3D enable a layer, it defaults to classic 3D. So if I put in a camera, I can orbit around either axes, pan, tilt, and zoom in and out. So we already covered this with parallax. That's basic 3D. Well, this is 2.5D really, because there's no depth to it. You'll notice geometry options down here are grayed out. So if I switch over to Cinema 4D in my dropdown, now I have geometry options. And now I can extrude out. And you'll notice when you're doing, this is the most basic primitive 3D there is. It's more basic than Minecraft. So I'm only showing you this to get an understanding of it. Nobody uses it. You're never going to use it. But you have to know the basics before you can dive into the more complex software. So I'm going to add a light. Let's do a spotlight. And you'll notice now we're starting to see a bit of that depth. When I rotate it and move it around. So now you can tell it's 3D because the light's hitting this side and that side's a little bit darker. And if I rotate my camera a little bit more, you'll start seeing that a bit better. Is there any questions about 3D enabling a layer? One second. Any questions about 3D enabling a layer, adding in a light and a camera like we've done in the past? Okay. So to add this depth, I had to go to the drop-down menu and go to Cinema 4D, okay? When you're working in this very primitive, clunky 3D space, there's also render options. You'll notice if I crank this up, let's say to 50, hit OK. Let's up my preview resolution. We're going to get a more detailed render, but the time it's going to take to render out this stuff is going to be astronomical. So when you're just doing motion design, you want to be in draft mode and drop down your resolution. A lot of the time, you're even going to go to custom and type in, I do like 20 by 20. I think once they hopped over to the more advanced 3D, they disabled a lot of the 3D functionality in the basic one. So we might be diving into the more advanced earlier on tonight. We'll find out in a second. So we already added a camera. We added a light. You could always change your options for both under here. You know, like not the camera, the light. I can make it more intense if I wanted. And you can animate it, all that stuff. There we go. Now we're starting to see. So what I'm going to do is, I already showed you how to de-res, like 2020, get a lower preview. And over here, under render options, we're on quality 1 to go as fast as possible. So, I've got a quick question for everybody. Has anybody ever played the Crane game in an arcade? Because I just didn't want to, just assume that everybody had played that before. Okay. So, when you're doing 3D, you will almost never rely on one camera view to get all your work done. So I want to get this light directly over this box. And you know what? Just so I can see a little bit better, I'm going to make this a little brighter. So in order to get my light directly over it and shining down, I'm going to need a multi-camera work view. You've got two options. Right here at the corner where it says one view, I can do that, and now it's going to be split up into 4 different views, okay? That's the way some people work, or if you've got multiple monitors. I myself don't do that. What I do is I go over to this drop-down that says active camera, and I'll switch between left, top, right, bottom. You know, so I'll say, well, I'll go to the top view. And I know I want to get the light directly over the cube. So I can keep moving along an axis. And I'll make that a little bit less bright so I can see what's going on here. Because it's blowing everything out. Now I can see better. So I can tell I'm right over the cube. So if I go to my right view, and I'm using a spotlight, because with the spotlight, you can move the point of interest. So now I can see it's pointing directly down, and it's over the right and the left. So if I go back to my camera view, I can see that that's happening. And if I change the color, let's make it blue. Only the top of the cube is blue because I'm shining the light on the top. Any questions on that? Because if you don't get it, I can go through it again. But your basic workflow for lining stuff up in 3D is, you know, whenever possible, you start laying stuff out in front view so that everything lines up. But then to line stuff up precisely, you're going to have to go from view to view to line things up in space properly. So I can tell them right over the top. And then if I go to the right view, I can see that I'm pointing straight down over the box. And then I go back to the camera that I want. And now I can make the light brighter if I choose to. So I can see the effect better. Any questions on that? Okay. So we'll press on ahead. Another thing to know, like I said, when you're laying out a scene, most people start in front view, just so that things aren't spread out in Z space. So here's camera 1, okay? Here's another important thing to know about 3D and After Effects. You can have more than one camera, as I've said before. So I'm going to add camera 2. And this one, I'll make it a zoom lens. Hit OK. And I'm going to zoom in a bit. Move it over. So let's say my first camera is only going to be for like a second. Is this view? Second? Why won't it update? Oh, hold on a moment. Why is that not allowing that to happen? That is wild. Looks like After Effects removed that functionality. It used to be whatever camera's on top is what you're going to see, so you could do a multiple camera render, but they got rid of that in basic 3D, so I'm going to skip past that. Don't forget, when you're animating your camera, the less keyframes, the better. And if you have trouble using these controls up here, you could always use a null to parent to your camera. So I'm going to delete this one, go back to a basic view. I'm going to add a camera. And I'm going to add a null. I've got to make my null 3D. And if I just grab this pick whip and I parent it to the null, let's see what happens. If I go to rotate, now my camera's rotating, just like the null was. And if I go to position, now it's working the camera that way. So if you have trouble working the many different camera buttons, parenting it to a null, just by pick whipping from that layer to the null, will work out pretty well for you. Okay, so I already covered going into low res and draft mode. Now, here's one to see if anybody was listening. I'm going to delete my camera, go delete my null. I'm going to add a circle to my scene. And I'm going to 3D enable the layer. Let me just make sure we're rolling. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. What's going to happen when I extrude this? What shape is it going to become? Yes, exactly. It will become a cylinder like a can of soup. Remember, primitive basic 3D pushes everything straight back. You're going to get a cylinder like a can of soup, not a sphere. So this is only for that like 1980s, 1990s style of just push straight back 3D. Does everybody understand that? Like if you use text, you can have 3D text in here. You know, it's going to be fine. Then I'll 3D enable that. And I'll push back. And this will work. And it is usable. You know, and like I said, it's only so low res because I'm working so low res. And I could add a light to the front. You can have more than one light, but the more lights you add, the more it's going to slow down your render. So let's see why this one is not lining up. So if I go to top, looks like it's pointing at it. So we'll go to right. It is pointing at it, which is the strange thing. Let's crank it up some more. Go back to our camera. Oh, wait a second. Let's do custom view because we don't have a camera in the scene. That's why. There we go. Now let's take a look at that. It's all lined up. So what I could do now, before we go into the weeds with the more complex stuff, I can start, let's give this a convex bevel. I can start doing things like focusing on my material properties, like cast shadows, accepts lights, a little bit brighter, diffuse that a bit more. And that's all going to interact with how things in the scene look with it as well. So that's where you'll edit the look of your material in the primitive 3D. But like I said, I'm just showing you where these things are to give you a little bit of an understanding before we hop into the complex stuff. A few more things I wanted to go over with basic 3D, and then we're all done. Like I said, I'm trying to keep it short tonight so that you have a little bit extra lab time. But remember, if you got any questions next week, we'll dive back into basics so that you understand it. All right. So I'm going to add a light and a camera. All right, so my shape, it's still a shape in After Effects, so I can add a trim path to it if I want. Go drop down my resolution so we can go faster. I'll animate the end. So you can see it is still animating. That function works. Let me choose... Let me extrude this a bit. Now when I change the camera, you'll see we've got a 3D oval that is still keeping that trim path. So I'm going to duplicate that. Well, let me change the color. Let me make it white. Okay, so this is white. And I'm going to make the color of my spotlight to demonstrate this. I'm going to make it green. Do you see how the shape turned green because the light is green? Does everybody see that? Okay. So I'm going to duplicate this. Let me call it ring. All right, so if I duplicate this, Control D, and let's change the rotation of it. Oops, that was the light I duplicated, not the ring. Control D. Both of these up a little bit. Okay, so now I've got kind of like an atom draw on. And I'm going to make my camera look like it's at an angle. So it almost looks like a letter X. Okay, I'll settle for this. So let me just... Like I said, it's very difficult controlling the camera with this buggy After Effects controls. Okay, so I'll call this scene green X, so it looks like an X. And I'm going to make a new scene, and in here, I'm going to put a rectangle, my square, make it white, 3D enable it, and I'm going to extrude it out. Don't worry, I'm going somewhere with this. And this is probably the most important thing I'm going over tonight, so make sure, once I've got the scene set up, that everyone's listening. Like, this light is going to be red. So we can tell right from the get-go what's what. All right, and now I'm going to add a camera. And let's make this one look like it's from the bottom a little bit. So we're looking at the bottom of this box. I'll call this one red. All right. Now, I pre-composed this. I've got a light, a camera, and my materials. The perspective is almost at an angle, and the light is green. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. In this one, I have a red light, and we're looking at it from the bottom up. All right? Watch what happens. I'm going to take my green pre-comp and nest it into my red one. See if I have to 3D enable it. Nope. Maybe I do, maybe I don't know. You can't see anything. After Effects actually just fixed this with the newer updates. There's one thing I got to do. Let's see if this fixes it. All right. I had to move the playhead. So I got my pre-comp, and you'll notice I still have the same camera and the same lights as the pre-comp. It doesn't match up. All I have to do is click collapse transforms for that pre-comp. Now it's going to use the same lights and same camera as this scene. So if I move my camera, both pre-comps are affected and in the same perspective. Can everybody see that? All right. So in the future, if you're ever doing any 3D and you've got a pre-comp with another 3D pre-comp thrown inside it, you must collapse the transformations or else the perspectives won't match, the lights and the cameras won't match. That's what the difference between collapse transform, bringing an Illustrator layer in, and working with 3D is. Okay. I think that may have been the last thing I wanted to show you from the basic stuff. Yeah, so we covered all the basic 3D. And the same for this applies to parallax. It's just the only difference is we clicked on Cinema 4D Light, and under geometry options, we extruded it to give it depth. Because next week, after the crit for homework 1, we're going to learn advanced 3D, like the modern 3D, not this 1980s stuff. And it's going to be a lot more difficult. So I'm just making sure everyone understands, you know, oh, I can go look at this from the front or, you know, the top. And I'll be able to look and line things up. You know what I mean? So if you're all comfortable with that, great. And just so you know, for the more advanced 3D, you start off by going File, New, Maxon Cinema 4D file. So I'm going to email everyone and make sure that on your machines you've downloaded the latest and greatest plugins for Cinema 4D, and you've set up a dummy account so that you could access some of the functionality, or else you'll only be able to just watch and not follow along. So I'll end this here. And next week will be advanced 3D. But it's still going to be basic 3D. Like, I'm not going to be having you do Pixar level stuff. But it's going to be far more deep and buried and complex than the primitive After Effects layout. So we're going to be taking it slow. It might actually take us 2 weeks to get through 3D and Cinema 4D, but... Where your render worked. Very nice. Oh, cool. It's going to look a little blotchy in Google Drive, but I'm going to open up your file after this. You can even do look a little xylophone blink sound there. I love that. Very fun. My only thing would be to keep it on black. You don't need to fade it out. You can just fade out the music. Actually, I would just fade to black over top of if you're going to do a fade with the music too. But that's really nice. I like that a lot.
I forgot to fade the music. I realized that afterwards.
And you know how to now, right?
Yeah, I just forgot about it.
Yeah. All right, no problem. It's looking phenomenal. I mean, you've got music, you got sound effects. Stellar job. Yeah, so like I was saying, I don't know if you've ever watched cartoons recently, but like when people blink their eyes, sometimes there's that plink sound, like the blink, blink, like with a xylophone type thing, like a wooden xylophone.
Yeah, I was considering that too. I just kind of ran out of time.
Right. Yeah, no problem at all. Because we're on the same page, so. Let me put that there. Close this. Close that. Yeah, sorry if I messed up your workspace. Yeah, so like a little plasticky thump sound there, little blink sound effects. It almost makes me wonder if, yes, that's hitting in right there. That's laying up pretty nicely. Oh, it's because I don't have the font. That's what's doing it. Yeah, I'm thinking you almost don't need that studio, but you know, it works for everything you're doing. Just watch. Oh, there's your fade out. Oh, I see what happened. Okay, so you fade it out, but your timeline's too long. So you got two choices. Let's pretend this is your last frame here. Can you see okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at like 31 seconds. Let's do 31 period 00. So your two choices are this. You could grab your render bar and, you know, snap it. Or you can just go composition, composition settings, 31 period 00. I'm going to start your time code at 0. There we go. And there's your fade. See, now there should be, let me undo. It was because the timeline had that -1 second thing on it. So it really would be 32 seconds. Let's try that. Okay, so it's stopping right 31:03. Like that. So now you're not going to have to worry about that ever again. That's just the fast way of editing your timeline. But yeah, like I said, just adding in those little bit of sound effects are really going to be great. Like the little clink and the plinks of the eyes moving around. But everything else is stellar. Great job. Okay, well, yeah, you could just line up those sound effects and render it out. And you know how to line them up now that you know how to see the audio waves. Like if I click down here, click here, click wave, I could see where those sound effects would line up and where I would need them to be, you know? Like that little blink, blink sound right there. You could line that up exactly with your waves. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, cool. This looks stellar. I mean, even if you don't add those things now, I mean, it's still an outstanding project, so. Beautifully done. And you did some very advanced stuff here, so you really jumped in head first with your motion design. Yeah, this thing's still a little off, but if yours looks fine, that's great. Okay, and that's going to line up on yours, not mine. So what I'm going to do is we'll go to right here. I'm going to go to full res so I can get an idea what your particle system looks like. This way, whenever I'm looking at particles like this, I look at one frame so I know what it looks like. And then I preview the motion at full res. You know what I mean? I mean at half res, or lower res. Okay, there's particles for that, and glow on that. So is this the smoke, I'm assuming? Let's find out. Okay, so this is the smoke. The smoke's looking a little blocky, so let's dive in. It is a texture faded disc. Fog. Oh, you know what? I don't have the image. That's why it looks blocky. That's hysterical. Okay, Cloud PNG 16. All right, so yeah, so if you don't have all your artwork in there, it won't link up. Yeah, no problem at all. At least it's something I was able to find.
Yeah.
Like one student did the same thing, but it was with custom artwork they found online. And luckily, they didn't change the name of the file. Like pretend it was like sneaker ad 1425 Nike Studios. I Googled it and it popped up and I found the exact image and I was able to pop it in for them. So it's like that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
So now we'll get a better look at it. But you see how even though the image was missing, it looked blocky because that's what it did. It was saying something's got to fill this bounding box. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, that's some weird space fog. That makes sense. And it should fix itself here. There we go. I'm going to turn back on your stars. See, that's much better. Okay, good. So we got an idea of what that's going to look like. That's why I wanted to look at it full res first. All right. Now I'm going to drop down to quarter res. I just want to see how fast that cloud is moving. What in the... Oh. I see. What I want you to do with the file before submitting it?
Yeah, like purging, like making sure that it doesn't look like this when I submit it and all that.
There's what in it?
Like just making sure that it doesn't look like this when I submit it and all that. Like that's
yeah. While this is rendering, if you brought in Illustrator artwork, continuously rasterize those layers like you did. Great. And I'll run through the render process, one more time with this. Now, obviously, I'm not going to fully render it out because of your particle system, but I'll show you the settings. And also, like I said, the artwork doesn't line up anyway, so you just follow along. So you did everything right. Your Illustrator stuff is continuously rasterized with the gears. So just double check before you render it out. You got your music in. If you do have music and sound effects, make sure the speaker icon is on, because if you click it, it'll mute it. So make sure that's on for each layer that has sound, which you've got, which is good. So those are the only two things you would need to check with this project. And like I said, I'm just wanting to make sure your fog isn't too extreme with its motion. You know what I mean? Like it should be pretty unchanging. Like let's take a look at these 7 seconds. See how it's got too much life? So there's lots of easy fixes for that. And next time we'll only do like 3 seconds of rendering. So here's your stars. I already know it's in there. This one is the fog. I already know that. Okay, so it's really just a matter of your settings. Like rotation, I'd make those both 0. So it's not spinning around. Okay, that's going to save you some space. I mean, not just that, but it'll cut down on some of the rendering. I'm going to hide this because we don't need it. It's distracting me. Okay, so we zeroed that out. It's getting large as it lives. It's living a long time. You did some great listening here. Very happy to see that. And Dino, great job with your particles as well, too. You zeroed out your gravity, good. You zeroed out the extra, good. Now, let's try and up the resistance so it moves less. Let's see if that fixes anything. All right, so let's give it 3 seconds of render and find out. See how it's not rotating anymore? Okay, so instead of that, let's render this part where it's already on the screen. It looks a lot more static.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think from what I think it's a bit clustered. Like if it could have less stars.
Yeah, or he could spread them out more. Yeah, it's a good call.
Yeah.
First, I want to take a look at the stars. I mean, the fog. All right, so let's see that. We fixed that. Okay, so that was just... You'll have this recording, but what we did was under particle, we zeroed out rotation and initial rotation. That's the only change I did there. Let's check your opacity map. I would do that so it's not fading in and out. That also cut down on some of the chatter. I just filled that in. Bum, 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 bum. Physics, we increased the resistance. And you already had that other stuff zeroed out, which was excellent. So let's tackle those stars. Good call, Dino. So that is under producer. We can just spread them out more so that there's less of them. Like such. Now, another thing, let's go back to your beginning. What I would do here is I would just slide these layers down a bit so that, and then drag them out longer so that they're not being born at the beginning, like they're already there. You know what I mean? So you see how the fog's already there and the stars are already in the sky? All I did was I just dragged those, you know, to the left in the timeline.
Yeah, no, I did drag it up a little bit to time out.
Okay, yeah, so great. Those were all easy fixes, and we spread out the stars. What we did for that was we went to the producer, and the radius we changed to these numbers. You could do whatever you like with yours, but I'm just showing you, you know, adjusting the size of it will have less stars. And let's see if we can do a fraction, just for the fun of it. Yeah, you can even go 0.5 as well with your fraction to have even less stars. So, very nice. Let's try 2 for the birth rate of the fog, just for the fun of it. That looks like it might have actually more life. So just be cautious of that. But yeah, great job. I'm liking all the changes you made. And these are some simple fixes. I'm not going to give you this file because I don't want to screw up your artwork. You know what I mean? Because it's not lining up.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got your song in. And, you know, maybe a sound effect here or there, like a ventilator sound, you know? Or something. But, or maybe some little beeps for the blinks. But yeah, looking good. Great job. Oh, yes. Duh. Almost forgot. All right. So, like you said, you're doing your render checklist. You make sure all your layers have collapse transform on for the Illustrator. Make sure all your sound layers have the speaker icon visible. Then the project you want to render, make sure you have that one clicked on. And make sure your render bar covers the full amount of the timeline that you want rendered. And from there, it's just composition, add to render queue, click on lossless, change it from AVI to QuickTime. Hit OK. That's the only setting you got to change. Then here, you just name it what you want and where it's going to go. I'm just going to do desktop so I don't save it anywhere. And then I would hit render. And this is going to take a while to render, so I'm going to stop that. And from there, you would just open up Media Encoder. Wait for that to open up. Media Encoder takes a moment to open. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to... All right, so you click the plus. Your video would be an MOV. We'll pretend this is it. I'll hit open. And it might give an error because... yeah, because we didn't fully render the file, so it's not going to allow it. But when you do import your thing, just make sure it's on H.264. This first drop down in blue. Next, you want to have match source high bitrate. Then you click here, you name it, and where you want to save it to. And last step, you hit the green play button, and it'll convert it from an MOV to an H.264 file. Any questions on that? Yeah, you got to fully render it out in After Effects. It'll make an MOV, which is like 11 times bigger than you want it to be. Then you put in Media Encoder. And if your Media Encoder does not work, let me know and just put the MOV in your Google Drive, along with all your artwork and all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, excellent. So what are you picturing you're on doing? Because I remember your sword comes down, you have the particles sliding around the floor. I don't really think you need to have a particle following a null system because the particles you have look phenomenal. Like, what were you picturing on doing to...
So, what I was trying to, so when the word is on the screen, this is just for the beginning. I would have I would have a pad that with it comes across and display the wording.
Okay. I think I know where you're going with this. I want to show you something to warn you about it. Okay, so I'm going to dummy this up, okay? Clearly yours is going to be more advanced. So I'm going to add a solid in the background. I'm going to make it blue just so we're not staring at blinding white. Okay, there's blue. I know this isn't what your font looks like, but this is just for reference. Okay.
Yeah, I'm hoping I cut that my font in the folder too.
All right. So here's what's going to happen. Let me show you something. Can everybody see there's space behind and in front of the text in 3D space? So, like, I'll show you what I mean even more so. If I 3D enable this, I hit P for position, I can go in front of the type or behind it. Everybody got that idea? Because there's now space in front and behind. That's what 2.5D is. Does that make sense to people? Like, if I rotate the camera some more, you know what? I can just grab this. See? You can have elements in front of or behind in 3D space. Got that idea?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you see this white square, how it's flat? Like it doesn't have depth? What might happen, I've not tried this with the new 3D system in After Effects, but it's fairly buggy. Your particles might not look like they're going in front of and behind your text. If you wanted to look like that, you might have to do two particle layers where one part goes to just before the text and the other part is from just behind the text. So I'll show you what I mean by that. We'll pretend this white box is your particle system. Right there, it's cutting through, which it wouldn't be doing. So we'll hit Command D to duplicate it. So you would need to do two passes of your particle system. So you'd have two layers. One layer is going as deep in front of the camera as you want it to just before your type. And the second layer is from just behind your type into how deep behind it you want it to look like. Does this sort of help you visualize it?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so it's like the text is in between. Now that's if the look you're going for. So let's test out and see what the particle system does in After Effects. All right, so I'm going to hide these just because, you know, I don't feel like recreating them. We got our type. We got our text. Camera. We're not going to do a light. All right, so I'm going to do layer, new, solid, particle test, effects, particle world. I'm glad you brought this up, and this ties into 3D, which I was covering tonight, so well done. All right, here's our particles. Oh, it's actually going behind them. And this is in Cinema 4D workspace. So let's add a little bit of geometry to this. It looks like they may have fixed that issue. You may have lucked out. So that deep explanation wasn't necessary. All right, so let's try Now, the next thing is, will that particle expression work with... Yeah, it should work. Because we've got 3D type. All right, so let's knock that out real fast. Here's the background. Here's your type. Here's the particles. Let's make this not so deep. I'm just dumbing up something really fast. Maximum opacity 100, sure. Keep those colors. I don't want them fading off and on. Now let's go to our physics. I'm going to kill my velocity. Let's have it drift a tiny bit up just for the fun of it. Get rid of the extra. All right. We got that happening. So now I'm going to hit P. Nope. So if there's the particles, I'm going to twirl down here, go to Effect. Here's my producer. Now I'm going to add my 3D null, layer new null, and I'm going to 3D enable that. P, there's all that. And the expression was... So it's in Files, Virtual Reference.
Yeah, I see that file on that.
Yep. Okay, great. So I'm going to copy this. Position. I'm going to add it in there. And my null is called null1. Oh, neat. It automatically found it. Click out of it. Good. That looks like it's working so far. Why? Like I said, I've got to knock out the whole thing to see what's going to happen for you. You know what I mean? This way we can troubleshoot together. Click out of it. Okay, I can twirl these down to free up some space. Hold down Alt or Option, click there. Make sure it matches the name of the null in the scene. Click out. Okay, great. So I'm going to have this go above, in front of and behind your type. Okay? I'll have it start the middle. Forward a little bit. And where's my Z? Right there. See, now you can see we're coming towards the camera. Now I'm going to go behind the type. And I'm going to go this way. Like that. And we will change our camera so we can see what's going to happen. This is my first time trying this. You're the first student to want to see what happens. There's our particles going in 3D space in front of... Now do you see what just happened there? It is behind it, but it didn't keep that. It's crossing through it like such. So I'm looking at this. I'm going to show you a little cheat. I'm moving my playhead one frame at a time. And that's the page up, page down. Let's say right here, okay? It looks like 289.5 is where this layer should cut off. So let's see if we can do that mathematically. Let's try 289.5. See if we can enter that in. Nope, won't do it. All right. In other software, there is a way of cutting off in Z space by looking at that right there. There's the effect camera. There's the depth cue. You can only do a fade or fog. Let's try the particle. Or the... That's not in the producer. Yeah, so there's no way of cheating that depth. It will go behind it, but as you see, it crosses through that plane. You know what I mean? Depending upon the angle you're at and how you're crossing through, you may not notice it. So that's just something to take into consideration, you know? I would recommend doing what I did, a quick, fast motion comp like this, where you're not eating up a whole day, making it look perfect, just to see if your idea will work and how it will respond to your scene. Like, if that dropped down below the E, you might not really notice it, but there you do notice it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What could work, let's try and do this the super stupid way. You ready? Let's see. I'm going to get my text. Control D, duplicate it, put it above the particles. So, for that part, where I want it to look like it's from right about here. So I would just trim that layer to start there. So it's going in front. Now we're starting to get that happening. So the other thing we could try is with that layer selected, I could say, let's ignore this part. Let's see if that works. Now we're getting kind of goofy here. Oh, you know why the mask isn't working? Because we're in Cinema 4D. That's why. Okay, all right. Yes, that won't work. Cinema 4D doesn't allow masks. Okay. The other thing would be to pre-compose this, then put a mask on the pre-comp. So we need it from... That's the part that's going goofy. I'm going to pre-compose the whole layer. I'm just testing this out real quick. Okay, now it's because... Let's see if I can still work the mask in here. And let me choose that to subtract. So it's right about here. So I'm going to trim this layer. So it's still in front. Good. Oh, and I'm going to need... See, that mask worked. So if I set up a second mask, I'm just testing this out to see if this is the good workaround. Looks like we found some fixes. You know, it's just combining, like I said, other techniques we know. So we pre-composed that 3D layer. See, now it's doing that. That was our cheat. And now no one would know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what you're thinking can be done if you've got a duplicate to put in front. You pre-compose it, make the pre-comp 3D enabled, and then draw masks. And my masks I set to subtract. So I drew the parts I wanted the particles to be over top of. Make sense to you?
Yeah.
I'll send you this for reference. I'll call it Fake 3D Particle System. And I'll send that to everybody. So you've got it. That's neat because you tied in last week and this week. Well done. Yeah, no problem. That's what I was going to pull up next. So what I'm going to do,
A question about the one thing.
no problem. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to click one time, import footage as composition, retain layer sizes. That way if there's layers, it's going to keep them, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to hit import. And I'm going to double click on the pre-comp to open it up. And before I forget, I'm going to rasterize it, okay? I mean continuously rasterize. So next, I'm going to import the other one. Same thing, click once. Import. Double click to open it. Rasterize it. Okay, so I'm going to make these full res just because we're looking at still images. Okay, so here we go. You ready? All this is a flat image. If I want to make it unflat, I can just right click, create shapes from vector. So now I've got this multi-layered file. And what I'm going to do is, you must have used compound paths, right?
I think so.
That's what happened. Okay. So let me show you what my thought was. I've got nothing selected. Eyedropper. Here's one window. Shift D duplicate. The perfect crime. Okay, so I've got my windows. Nothing selected. I'm going to... We'll pretend this is a cloud. You'll get the idea. Okay. We'll pretend you got multiple clouds like you did in yours. Come on. Okay. I'm going to duplicate the window, Control D, put it above the cloud, and on the cloud layer, I'm in switches. I want to be in modes, cloud, alpha matte. The reason you're still seeing the sky is because we duplicated that window. If there's only one, you wouldn't see that. So now, P for position. We got there. We'll move forward. Now you'll have your clouds moving in the background. You can even have birds flying as well, maybe even planes going past. See how I got that to work without having to damage any more of your layers? So just giving you an idea to fake some depth, having stuff going on in the background. Birds, planes, you know, you could even do funny things, whatever. So that's a little bit of push you can have with that. That's funny. Okay. So, what is this right here?
So that's a piece of duct tape. I wanted that to be like a belt, like a conveyor belt kind of.
Okay.
And I wanted the duct tape to like move.
Gotcha. So this is where that should be its own layer. And this should be a layer. So let's cheat that. Pretend that's your duct tape. Fill, linear gradient. Then we can, I'm just doing this for, you know, speed running. I should be a gamer. All right, so now I can edit my gradient. Is this it right here? Yeah. I had to have my selection arrow there. I can't quite just roughen those two edges. So, all right, so there's our proof that something's going to be moving. We'll call this tape. Let's break this down. This is going to be super easy. If you had lines here, I'll show you what that's going to look like. So nothing selected, so I'm making a new layer. Obviously, these railings would need to be their own layer above it to cheat this. And I'm going to give this a solid fill. I'm going to make it red just so it stands out. Okay, we got that happening. Now, we're going to go... Let's do stroke on it. We'll make it black just so it sticks out. A little thinner. Okay. Now we're going to give it dashes. And let's see. We're going to want these dashes to go... Rotate that. So let's look at the offset. That's the offset. That's what's going to animate, but we want vertical dashes. Okay, so let's get rid of that stroke. And let's try... That's the first shape. Just follow this angle right here. And we just have that one line. So we'll call this stripe. Okay, let's try a repeater on it. We'll give it a negative offset. And we'll give it tons of these. And what we'll do is we'll have it just here. So it's going past there. I'm going to click the offset, we'll go through here, we'll give it some more continued negative offset. So right about there. Okay, let's see if it looks like they're moving. Yep, obviously it's going in the wrong direction, but you see how we're creating that cheat there?
Yeah.
By animating that, obviously I'd be going in the opposite direction. And, you know, you could use the shape of the belt. I'll call it belt. I'll duplicate that, put it above, use it as an alpha mat. The one below makes it still visible. And then this layer would be over top of it. So that's how you can cheat it to make it look like stuff's going through the conveyor belt. And obviously you would just do position for whatever's passing through it. And this way you don't have to animate all that stuff. It was just 2 keyframes and an offset. I got that offset by, you know, drawing the line, and I added a repeater to it. Wait, that's the belt. I'm sorry. I'm a yo-yo. Yep, repeater. It was just add repeater. So you can do whatever you wanted in there to fake the lines that way if you want. And, you know, if they had it like a security line going down the other way, I'm going to make a new path. This one I'm going to make white, just so you can see the difference. I'm just showing you 2 different types of offset. So I could go down here, contents, stroke, add a dash, change it to however I need it, and I can animate the offset of this one. So I could click here, go forward, go negative. See, now that's moving. And then I do the same thing. I just use that shape as a trim path. I mean, a alpha mat. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Any other questions? Like I said, layer this out if you can, you know. Like you could have that be one shape layer. That could be a shape layer. That could be a shape layer. Just, it'll make it so much easier to animate. Trust me. You don't want to have flat images in After Effects. It's really going to hobble you. And then each thing you bring in, just continuously rasterize it. And where's the businessman? Like with your businessman, I'm going to re-import that one just so we got it from scratch. So I go import file businessman. So once you've got it all layered out, just remember import as, composition retain. Here's your duplicate that we just created. You double click and there's everything. Just continuously rasterize it. You're all good to go to animate.
Thank you so much.
No problem at all. Best of luck with this. Anyone else have anything they want to show me? That's one of the benefits if you're doing like simple shapes in After Effects. You don't have to keep linking artwork to it.
Okay.
03. 03. Oh, 0303. Okay, yeah, so we'll get that file later on. Oh, that's interesting. All right, so one second. There we go. There's the timeline. So what was the penguin riding on?
Just the clouds.
Oh, okay. It looks like you put some effects on it too. Come on. Oh, it's down here now. Yeah, it's rough and edges. Okay, so penguin comes in. And this... Okay, there's going to be a texture on that. Gotcha. Okay, he's getting bigger. That's getting smaller. The ground should scale up with the penguin as well. So it's like what you could do is, where's your penguin? Let's go you. Here's where the scaling starts. This is your texture, right? Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this layer. You could go edit, split layer, or you could hit Command-Shift-D. Now with the split, if I parent it to the penguin, now when the penguin scales up, it's going to scale up in perspective with him. Okay? And let's try something fun. I'm going to put this here. Oh, wait. Hit undo. Deselect. I'm going to make this white square. I'm testing something out. I'm just getting theoretical here. Let's see, where's that split happen? Here's that. Penguin. Scale. That's what we're looking at. Okay, here's where the scale's about to happen. Where's my square? Right here. Okay. So I'm going to split it there. Just that, we can see what's going to happen. And I'm going to parent this to the penguin. Going to twirl down. So that was scale. So I'm going to hit undo. Let me try something out. I'm going to hit S for scale. I'm going to grab my pick whip by scale. Let's see. Let me pick whip this to the scale of the penguin. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's scaling up. Let me twirl down. I'm just testing out. This is all theoretical. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. That didn't work the way I wanted it to. There used to be a way to do negative motion in After Effects. I'm going to get rid of that expression. So let's take a look at your keyframes. So, oh, you got a lot of them. You're going from 60.8 to 88.3. So I'm going to click here. Let's see, you're here. Okay, 64.3. All right, so you went from 64.3 to 88.3. So that's 24. You went forward 24. So I'm going to go backwards 24. So if I was at 100 minus 24, I could just go 100 minus 24 and hit the enter key. That's lazy person's math. Now, this should scale the same amount at the same time as the penguin. Let's find out. Okay, my timing was a little off, but that does work. So I would make sure your igloo is going in the negative motion the same amount as, okay, here's where the scaling starts, right about here. So I just got to move my keyframe. There we go. Yes, I would do that. Just make sure you're in the same timing and moving the same amount backwards as the penguin. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and then maybe like some sound effects, little music, maybe a bird or something, or clouds going by in the distance. Well, I mean, you got the cloud at the beginning, but you get the idea. All right, it's looking pretty nice. Are there any eye blinks in this? Yeah, there are. Okay, and the feet move. Okay, good. All right. There you go. So much better. There you go. Excellent. One thing I didn't notice the first time is the music kicks in perfectly with the timing of the studio text moving. Very good paying attention to that. That you timed that perfectly. Excellent. It's looking spectacular. So like I said, if you do develop an interest in 3D, there's some really impressive stuff you can do with the free software these days. All right, just make sure you have all your work submitted to me in Google Drive by 5:30 p.m. Tuesday coming up, this week that's rolling around, and we'll do the crit. So be prepared to discuss your animation as well as provide constructive criticism to everyone else's work. All right, have a great weekend, and I will be checking my email on Saturday and Sunday and Monday to see if anyone has any issues or questions.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
No problem at all. Have a great evening, everybody.